Hello all and welcome to this quick video on 20th century policing. So what we're going to look at in this video is how policing has changed in the 20th century. So when we looked at Whitechapel, that really was policing up to the end of the 19th century. So now how does policing change in the 20th century? So first of all, we now have a number of large police forces. If you remember previously, obviously there were lots of small police forces that aren't run by the Home Secretary. Now obviously they are, so they've come under national government control. In the 1920s, we get women police officers for the first time. So obviously there is a change in terms of gender there. After the war in 1947, a police training college was opened. So they now take it very seriously about the training that police officers get. We know that during that Whitechapel days that obviously police officers weren't really particularly well trained. It was just if you could do the job, whereas now obviously they take that very seriously. We also get an improvement in technology that can be used. So bicycles start being used from 1909. Previously, obviously, police officers are just walking the beat. In the 1920s and 1930s, we get cars. 30s, we get two-way radio. And then obviously something you'll be very familiar with, 999 has been introduced. So people across the country can just contact the police whenever they need to. One of the big issues during the Jack the Ripper case is they just didn't have the tools they needed in order to catch him. And that's because technology hadn't really caught up with what the police needed. However, in the 20th century, we get a big change in terms of what police officers can use. So in 1901, we get a fingerprint branch. So we're starting to use fingerprints. That would have probably been very helpful during the Jack the Ripper case. Blood types are discovered. So again, you can identify what different types of blood. So whether it's the blood of the victim or whether it's the blood of the potential killer. We get progress in forensic science, so that has become even more popular, particularly in the latter part of the 20th century. So the forensic teams are very good now at detecting lots of different things, including hair samples and all those different types of samples. And computers from the 1960s are starting to be used by police officers. So everything's starting to become more centralized and better recorded. Previously, it's all done on kind of paper files, and that makes it very difficult. There is more technology as well that helps police officers. So breathalyzers are introduced. We know that in the 20th century, it becomes a crime to drink and drive, and therefore police officers can now tell the alcohol level within blood. There is also speed cameras. So we check in terms of how fast cars are going. And obviously, if you're going above the speed limit, then you will be fined or potentially lose your driving license. In 1988, DNA is used for the first time in a conviction. So the science is now caught up to the point where you can identify different people's DNA. So you can use that to catch a potential killer. And therefore, you're more likely to get less miscarriages of justice where the wrong person is convicted. We also get automatic fingerprint identification, and now there is a national database of fingerprints. And we have become a society, for better or worse, that uses CCTV and mass surveillance video. So it is very rare now you can go into a high street of a major city or a town and everything is being recorded, and therefore it's far easier for the police to identify potential suspects and therefore far easier to get potential convictions as well. What's also happened during the 20th century is the police force have recognised that they need to diversify. Because some crimes are so large, what they need is special units for those particular crimes. So fraud squad has been introduced. So fraud can sometimes be very complex, and therefore you need a certain level of specialty in order to solve those cases. So you've got fraud squad, we have specialist drug units, we have dog handling units. And we've also seen the introduction of special branch, and they deal with national security. So terrorism, for example, would be a national security issue, and therefore special branch, rather than your local PC, would be dealing with that. So while we get lots and lots of change in the 20th century, and a lot of that is driven by technological change in policing, we also sometimes in history find that you see reverting back to old ideas. So in the 1980s, there was a scheme that was introduced called Neighbourhood Watch. And the idea of that is you'd sign up within your local community, you would maybe put a sticker in your door, you might have seen some of those, and you'd be vigilant around the neighbourhood, what's going on, and you'd inform police if you could see something suspicious. And in many ways, that's like the old community-based policing that we saw in the medieval period and the early modern period. Remember, in those periods, it was very much about community-based policing. Now, while that system is in place, it's not compulsory and it's not certainly not nationalist, but very local. And they are only there to help the professional police. It's not their job to take the action themselves. They are just the informants, effectively, if they see something suspicious. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video on how policing has changed in the 20th century.